Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Fraternity Foodie. My name is Mike Eilon with Greek University. We're happy that you're joining us now for the second episode. So we're going to continue to tackle some of the most difficult conversations in fraternity and sorority life on this show. And we're also going to get the inside scoop on what our guests like to eat and where we can get it. So today we are going to welcome Zach Westerbeck. Zach is one of the Greek University speakers that specializes in mental health. A conversation that, in my opinion, is very much needed on today's college campuses. So welcome, Zach.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. I am stoked to be on right now, and I would agree with you. Mental health is definitely a hot topic right now, especially in America. It's a very exciting time, and I'm just stoked to dive into it, man. Ready to chat and just kind of talk through everything.
I love it. I love it. All right. So I know that you were once upon a time social chairman of Sigma Chi at Purdue. I also know, by the way, that Drew Brees is a brother of yours, a Sigma Chi from Purdue. Pretty cool. So tell me, what was that like?
Brother Brees, yes. He is part of the legacy that is Purdue Sigma Chi Cradle of Quarterbacks within the Cradle of Quarterbacks is what they say sometimes. Or we say that and made it up to sound cool. But either way, yeah, man, it's funny that you asked this question because from my perspective, it really gave me an opportunity to be introspective and look back on that time period. And I'll start by saying being a Sigma Chi and being a Sigma Chi at Purdue were, I am still a Sigma Chi. I'm still part of that brotherhood. Obviously the 4 years of college is a much different experience from post-grad life, being in the real world. But just feel extremely blessed from that experience because when you look, especially, just the quality of guys that were in my pledge class and you see them in the real world and everybody is just doing so well. And it's humbling to be a part of a group of guys that were so fun in college and then have made the transition in the real world to who they are today. But not to go off on a tangent, being the social chairman at Sigma Chi was a very simple experience for me. My mindset, and I laugh about this with my parents to this day, when I came into college, my main goal was to socialize, make friends, and party. It was very simple. I know a lot of students put a lot of self-induced pressure on themselves to succeed, and that's the world that we live in today, and we can unpack that here in a little bit. But for me, my simple truth to everybody listening was I just wanted to party. Right. And the best way to get closer to that was being the social chairman, and at that time, it was all about putting Sigma Chi on top. I wanted Sigma Chi to be the best fraternity on campus that partied with the best sororities, threw the best parties, and selfishly, I just wanted to have a good time. And so for me, being the social chairman wasn't this like life-altering, life-changing experience that sent me down a different path. It was just this period in time where I was the guy in charge of throwing the parties, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Nice. Now, you obviously have had a whole bunch of experiences since then. So if you could go back in time and reach out to Zach, who was social chairman at Sigma Chi at Purdue, what would you tell him knowing what you know now?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, the aspect of the partying side of things, keep in mind, and this is just being open and vulnerable to everybody listening. I partied a lot in college, 4 or 5, sometimes 6 days a week, depending on what the week was. There was some sort of party and I would participate in that. And that was the culture. And looking back on those experiences, I really got a lot of the hardcore partying out of my system in college. So from that regard, I really wouldn't change anything there. I think it was what I wanted out of my college experience, and I got that to the max. Mm-hmm. Where I would look back and give myself advice was there were a few brothers inside of Sigma Chi who dealt with some mental health struggles that I was very insensitive to at the time. And it's funny because life has a funny way of bringing things full circle and making sure that you gain a new perspective. And obviously we can touch on that with my own mental health. But I've always kind of, as I've evolved as a man and a human being myself, I look back on those experiences and I kick myself a little bit. And I don't want to get hung up on in the past. I don't want anybody to think that that's healthy for yourself or for me. I don't get hung up on the past, but I do wish that I would have dealt with those situations differently because at that time I just didn't have any perspective on mental health besides snap out of it, you're being weak. That was the only mentality I had. So I would go back and tell myself that you have no idea what's causing that person's pain or what they're going through. Why don't you just sit and listen? That's what I would have done rather than how I reacted and just told the person to snap out of it, be tough. Like, what are you talking about? We live in this wonderful house. You've got a million guy friends to hang out with. Like, what do you really have to be upset about? Which only makes the situation worse.
Yeah. Why is that? I mean, I think about that all the time. I think if I went onto Facebook right now and posted something to the effect of, I'm having a really difficult time right now, I'm having some mental health issues that I need to deal with. Today, forget about 20 years ago when I joined the fraternity, but today I would probably have other fraternity brothers, other friends that I've known throughout the years, basically say something to the effect of, well, just put on your big boy pants and get over it. So why is it that men have so much trouble talking to other men about mental health issues?
We don't learn the skills. So, I mean, gender roles are defined early on. They're not predefined, by the way. I want to make sure there's a differentiation there. Gender roles are not predefined. It's not at birth, you're this way, you're this way. I think some of it is absolutely genetics. It's the whole nature versus nurture conversation. But as we are brought up in any society, if you look at it globally, it's the classic boys don't cry, right? So if, when I was a kid, when I fall and I scrape my knee, my experience is, oh, hey, you scraped your knee, get up, big boys don't cry, you'll be fine. And a lot of times with girls, if the same exact incident happens, a girl falls down, scrapes her knee, she's taken care of, right? She's allowed to cry it out. She's allowed to kind of go through some of those emotions, which by the way, I believe is the proper way for both genders to do it. So I think that we're just conditioned from an early age that, you don't show emotion. And then it's kind of hard to get out of that cycle, because if you want to be accepted by your guy friends, you're not calling them up and crying to them or crying to them in person or having vulnerable conversations, because A, you don't know how to say it, and B, you're afraid on how they're going to react to you. I mean, my pledge brother never, ever once again brought up his mental health to me. And it's because when he brought it up to me, I was mean to him and told him to suck it up and get over it. So what does that do? That just conditions him to say, you know what, man, I just don't even need to bring this up. Zach, if he even takes into the advice, I put quotations around that because it was horrible advice, but let's say he does take that into consideration. His new thought process is, well, Zach said I just need to suck it up and get over it. But why am I not over it? And then it becomes this vicious cycle. So I just think gender roles are assigned early, and as men, we need to get out of our comfort zones, where our comfort zones are everything's all good. We're all surface level, and we need to start to recognize that in order for us to advance as a society, as people, as men, we need to start opening up and talking about how we feel with the people that we trust. I'm not saying go down the street to some random stranger. People still have to earn your vulnerability, but once they've earned it, let's build better bonds. Let's build stronger bonds with each other, and open up more,
I love that. That's amazing stuff. So when did you yourself started feeling depression and anxiety in your life? When did that start to hit you?
Yeah. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this question over the course of probably the last 6 to 8 months. And obviously you've been a huge component in me thinking back on how things went. And really it's a twofold story. So, in college, I was a party animal. I partied a lot, smoked a lot of cannabis. We'll use cannabis. That's a professional term, marijuana, weed, whatever you want to call it. To whoever's listening, you have your name for it. But for me, I spent a lot of time partying and self-medicating, if you will. Reason being I say it's two-part is because I started to experience symptoms on a smaller scale when I was in college. So just to give kind of the summary on that, basically I experienced my first serious breakup, my first serious heartbreak, and my first experience with loss of somebody who was very significant in my life. So I had a breakup with my very first girlfriend. It was kind of one of those blind loves. We met in high school. There were so many things about us that were great. There were so many things about me that weren't ready to be in that type of relationship. And as a result, she broke up with me, which looking back on it, hindsight 2020, completely understand exactly why she did it. All of it makes sense. But at the time, it didn't change how I felt, right? It was this earth-shattering experience for me. And when it happened, it was at the tail end of my freshman year of college. She was 1 year younger than me, so she was wrapping up her senior year of high school. We had been together for years now, and going into that summer, I started experiencing classic symptoms of depression and anxiety, which were caused by the breakup. Now, interestingly enough, as I put more space between myself and the breakup, there were some symptoms that just didn't go away. So the anxiety never left, and I started to experience some of the intrusive thoughts that come with an anxiety disorder. So, and nobody who's listening knows that I have an anxiety disorder. I'm going to get to that in a second, but I started to experience these classic symptoms, but because I was in college, because I was kind of able to outrun the symptoms in the sense of I was always partying or always smoking, dulling the senses, really kind of numbing myself, I didn't really feel the full effects of what was starting to fester underneath it all. Now you fast forward to graduation, I moved from Indianapolis, Indiana, which is my hometown, down to Raleigh, North Carolina to start my new career. And you're not partying as much, right? You're now a young professional. You're showing up to work Monday through Friday and you're doing a job. And what I started to notice is like, wow, I'm feeling something. There's a heart beating here, pounding in my chest for no reason. I wake up with these sweaty palms. I've got these racing thoughts. I've got these intrusive thoughts that I'm trying to stop. What is going on? And initially, it was this complete and total experience of denial. Like whatever these feelings are that I'm having, they aren't me. I don't identify with this. This has never been who I am. So I'm just going to bury it. You know, what we're talking about, that suppression. I'm just going to bury this. I want nothing to do with it. I'm going to pretend like it doesn't exist. Well, what I've learned over my experience through my own mental health journey, and then through speaking to so many people now that I've come out about my brain health, is the longer you let something fester, the worse it gets. And so in 2016, I was officially diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. A lot of people use OCD as kind of a joking term of, oh, I'm so OCD. I have to organize all these different things and keep things neat and tidy. Otherwise, I'm going to go insane. That is a joke. The anxiety disorder itself is not. It's very scary. It's intense. It takes over every waking moment of your life. You are constantly consumed in your own thoughts, and it's these horrible, dark thoughts that the harder you try to stop, the worse they get. So for me, my symptoms went from anxiety, extreme anxiety, to this kind of crescendo depression effect where it started off light, and then the depression just consistently got worse and worse. And the only way that I can describe it is just, it's this feeling of compression. Like the world feels heavy. Your head feels heavy on your body. And you just feel this constant sense of hopelessness. And that hopelessness of, am I going to feel like this every day? Because everything is kind of, not whitewashed, but gray washed, I would say, where everything is just a little more gloomy, and it intensifies that feeling of like life starts to lose its beauty almost when you go through this phase. to the point where inevitably I was experiencing thoughts of suicide all day, almost every day and almost all day long. And that was when I realized I needed to get help. But through that journey, what I learned is that, the breakup is more than likely what triggered something that was probably always going to happen. Doctors believe that, mental health issues come from your biology, your psychology, and then your environment. And so what they believe is that these genes kind of lay dormant inside of you. And then when something traumatic happens, it triggers it. And so that's probably what happened with me. But yeah, it was kind of this two-part phase where I started to experience them in 2012. But then in 2016, that's really when things got ratcheted up. And that's because I spent years and years denying what I was going through.
Interesting. So let's assume somebody out there is experiencing something similar. What can somebody do in order to stop those feelings from constantly coming back?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's that's the $1 million question. And to the neuroscientist that finds that cure and is able to make it so that those feelings of depression and anxiety never come back, you're going to be a billionaire, to whoever you are. Because the truth of the matter is that it depends. That's the answer. Every single person is different. With some people, depression and or anxiety are situational, and maybe it's a hard breakup, or it's a death of a loved one, or it's a tough time in your life where somebody's, bullying you, whether that be cyberbullying or in person, or somebody's just not treating you right, or making you feel less than. You can become depressed from simple life situations, stuff that everybody goes through, right? And those forms can last in small periods. They can last, over the course of a year or two, or they can last for forever. In my case, being diagnosed with OCD meant that, I was signing up for something that was more or less chronic. So there are some people that completely recover, never experience a symptom ever again. In my case, that hasn't happened yet. I'm a very optimistic person. But I'm not running from my diagnosis. I think to me, it's what's made me a better person. But the truth is that if you experience feelings of depression and anxiety, it's not something that you can just turn on and off. Mm-hmm. If it were that easy, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I think that's what a lot of people think, especially people who haven't experienced anxiety and depression. They just think it's something that you can turn off. Oh, just suck it up, right? No, you're fine. Look at your life. Look at everything that you have. You should be grateful. But the reality is it's not that simple, and it's a process, and it takes a lot of different components coming together. But the very first thing that I always tell everybody, and especially people that have come and spoken to me, is it takes recognizing that something's not right. Mm-hmm. Because if you keep living in denial, like what I did for so many years, that mental health is going to keep knocking on the door. The only difference is it's going to only continue to pound louder and louder until you listen, or it's too late. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing that I always say is the first step with your mental health and getting it back, right? I don't think that you can completely I think it depends, right? I don't think you can completely erase everything. If it's chronic, if it's situational, then I think it just, comes and goes. But the first thing is recognizing that you need some assistance, and that's okay. And then the second step is finding that professional in the mental health space, whether that be a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, that you feel compatible with, that you actually feel in your soul, like I can go to this person and I can speak to them about what I'm going through. And then they provide you with the necessary steps to get on the right track. And that might include medication, which, by the way, medication is still so stigmatized in the mental health space. That's still a huge debate where people are like, does medicine actually work? And that's another it depends question. I have friends where antidepressants didn't work for them.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I have friends where it's worked wonderfully. So it's going on your journey. But the first thing is recognizing that you need help. And second thing is seeking help from a professional. The last thing that I'll say is it's telling somebody in your life that you trust. The reason why I say finding somebody in your life that you trust and telling them that you're going through a tough time, or that you've been diagnosed with something, or you're dealing something when it comes to your brain health. The reason why I say trust and not somebody close to you is there's a distinct difference. Somebody could be close to you like a family member or a friend, and in so many ways they could be good for you, but in other ways they could be contributing to the problem of what's going on with your brain health in general. So why I say somebody you can trust, it's somebody that when you speak to them, you can tell that they're listening, and it's somebody that you can confide in, and somebody that isn't going to, in a lot of ways, respond the way that I responded first, right? Because I was close with him, but I wasn't somebody that was qualified to have those conversations, nor was I in a position to understand what he was going through. So finding somebody that you trust, that will listen to you, that will just love on you while you're going through your brain health journey is just so important.
Yeah.
So that's a long-winded answer, but
yeah. I mean, I feel like there are a lot of students that feel the way that you do. What's interesting is that from 2012 to 2015, I was executive director of Sigma Pi. And in that time, and working with all the undergraduate students that I was working with all over the country, I saw the number of mental health issues and specifically suicides on college campuses was climbing every single year. And I think that was the first time that I said, this is a major issue. We need to have this conversation. Men need to be talking about this issue. There's not enough men that are out there talking about this. So I think, that was the first time when I started seeing this is a major, major problem that we're not dealing with. We don't talk about that necessarily in a typical new member education process or a pledging process. Usually mental health is not part of that conversation, but it should be. So I guess my question is, what resources are available for students on campus who are dealing with these types of mental health issues? Where should they go?
Yeah. So through working with the universities, I mean, the biggest one, obviously, every campus provides in some capacity, some sort of counseling and psychological services, or CAPS is what they call it. And a lot of the universities that I've worked with, they offer an allotted amount of free sessions. So some universities do 10, some do 12, the kind of numbers vary, but what they're doing is they're offering you the opportunity as a student to go in and talk with a qualified therapist. Now, what I will say is that everybody's mental health is different. Everybody's situation, what they're going through, what they're experiencing, what their diagnosis is different. For me, going to a general psychologist didn't work. I actually tried that many times. I had a very specific niche mental health illness that I was dealing with in OCD. And it's going to be, your treatment and your recovery plan is going to be different if you have, bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or generalized anxiety or depression. So that's something that I want to emphasize and keep in mind. But a great place to start always is getting help. And one resource that campuses always offer is CAPS, which is in-person therapy. Now, if you're a student listening to this right now and you're not interested in doing something in person because you're either afraid that, the person that you go in and speak to is going to judge you, or you're not going to be compatible with them, or you don't want anybody on campus, let's say you go to a small school, or you're in the Greek system, which makes every school feel small. And you don't want to be seen at CAPS, again, counseling and psychological services, in their office. One option that you do have is Talkspace, which is virtual therapy. Now, that obviously comes with a cost. For the unlimited chat plan, that's $49 a month. What I will say to that is, from my experience, and I just believe this in general, there is absolutely no price tag on your brain health and your physical health. If there is something inside of you that needs to be taken care of, you need to address it, irregardless of money. But Talkspace, I guess I say that all to say that $49 can be affordable on a month-to-month basis if that's something that you need in the moment. Because I think that a lot of people, I know this to be the case for me, a lot of people think that they can just push through the situation and it's going to disappear. And I get that in certain aspects that seems logical, but it's actually counterintuitive. It actually just lets the situation fester and get worse. Really, if you wanted to spend $49 for a couple months, drop a couple, $100 or $200 for 4 months worth of counseling, and that's what gets you better and in a good space again, then it's worth it rather than it going the opposite way. So Talkspace is a virtual therapy option in case you don't want to go in person. And then I get back to this one. This one doesn't cost a dime. Finding that one person that you trust and that you can confide in, because there is something so liberating and so powerful about being able to talk about how you're feeling. And it's so funny. I used to be one of those closed book guys, one of the macho ones that thought that, being a man meant being quiet and somber and not dealing with your issues. And I'm the complete opposite now. If I feel some, feelings of hopelessness or sadness or anger or frustration or, any of the emotions that we experience on a regular basis, by the way, all men, you can deny it, but you feel them. I talk to my person, the person that I trust and confide in, which happens to be my girlfriend. And it does not matter what day it is, what time of day. If I need to have a chat, we talk, and it's the same for her, and it should be the same for everybody. So that was a long-winded answer. CAPS is a great first place to start. Talkspace is a virtual option. And then also just finding that friend or somebody that you can confide in is a great place to start.
I love it. Now, as fraternity men, I think you probably would agree with me when I say that I think fraternity houses, sorority houses, these places should really be the safest place on a college campus, because you have so many people that are kind of looking after you, people that are around you. It's not like you're not affiliated with anything. So there's people always around. So I guess my question is, what symptoms, what things should I be looking for in a fraternity brother or a sorority sister that is suffering from depression or anxiety issues? What are the clues that tell me this person might be having a problem?
Yeah, great question. And there's definitely some key indicators early. So the biggest one above all else that I would look for is if you notice that your friend is, or if you're noticing this in yourself, if you are sleeping all day, every day, like one of those, wow, John hasn't left his room in 5 days type situations, that might be an indication that something's going on with John, and we need to have that conversation again. John, that's just a name. So if somebody, just random name throwing that out there, but the biggest thing I would look for first is sleep. It could be the opposite. John has literally gone on a 4-day bender of no sleep. And by the way, your mental health and your sleep are directly correlated. So your cognitive ability drastically decreases after a few days of not getting enough rest, getting enough sleep. So the very first thing that I would look for above all else is somebody's sleeping patterns. Either they're spending all day, every day in their room, in their bed, either with the lights turned off or doing absolutely nothing. If they're doing that for a day or two, maybe they needed a couple recovery days. But if it's lasted for a week or beyond, that's probably a sign that something's going on there. Another thing is, in college, we all know alcohol and drugs are abundant. If you are noticing from one of your friends that their substance abuse is far and away above the norm of their norm, right? Their equilibrium. And that's a whole other conversation, by the way, but we don't need to unpack right now. But if you're noticing substance abuse above the norm from that individual, that could be a sign that they're going through something, especially if they've just recently had a breakup, if they're struggling with their grades, if they're having family issues, if they're having issues with another friend. That's stuff to look out for. Two more big key indicators, either the lack of appetite, or if you look at somebody, let's say they experienced extreme weight gain over like a month period, where it's just like, wow, again, using John again as the example, John has really ballooned over the last month. Like, let's talk to him and see what's going on, because that's a coping mechanism in a lot of ways. When people are experiencing depression or they're anxious or stressed, there are stress eaters, and then there are people that are, when they're stressed, they don't eat anything at all. And if you notice that somebody is not, nourishing their body with the proper food, and it's been over a long period of time, could be an indicator. And the last thing is just isolation in any form. So it's also counterintuitive, but when you're depressed and you're anxious, you feel weird, you feel weak, and you feel different from everybody else. So the natural inclination, and I don't know why this is, it's just human nature. The natural inclination is for that individual to isolate themselves. I've done it myself. I did it very well. And you can kind of hide and make excuses. And if people aren't really examining your life, you can get away with it, but it only makes the situation worse. So look for your friends if they're spending all day, every day in their room with the door closed, not letting people in, if they're disappearing for large periods of time, if you're reaching out to them over a holiday break and they're not getting back to you and you're not hearing anything back. These could be signs like, hey, maybe he or she is going through something a little more serious and we should address this.
Yeah, that's been super helpful. And I know this is a tough conversation to have, but I appreciate all the honesty and just being raw and authentic, because this really helps students. There's a lot of students out there that feel that way. They don't know how to talk about it. They don't know where to go for help. So I appreciate all the honesty and just being authentic. That, I think, really goes a long way with today's college students. So on a better note, just curious, I know that, you're quite the foodie. You like to travel all over the world.
Yes.
I follow you on Instagram, so I see some really cool photos. So I guess my question to you is, what is your favorite meal and where can we go to get that?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep it local. In the spirit of keeping it local, I'm here in Costa Mesa, California. I moved out here a little over a year ago from Raleigh, North Carolina. It's been amazing. To anybody listening, if you haven't made it out here to the West Coast, I would highly recommend it. I absolutely love it. But in the spirit of being local, I'm going to say that my favorite restaurant out here, far and away, is Mama D's. Mama D's is this Italian restaurant that when you walk in, they literally year after year have been rated the best restaurant in regards to service. So when you walk in, it literally feels like you're like a family member. Everybody's saying hi, giving you high fives, hugging you, what can I get for you? Here's some bread. Like, they're just over the top. Just the service is fantastic. And then the food is just excellent. I mean, the food is so great. And for me and my girlfriend, Italian food is very comforting. So on Sundays, we love to go get Italian, have maybe a glass or two of wine and just get loved on by the staff at Mama D's. And honestly, it's a wonderful experience. So if you're ever in Costa Mesa, that is the recommendation that I would make, because it is just far and away just one of those. It's a rare experience. You don't get that as much at a lot of these restaurants, especially if they've gone a little more corporate. No knock on corporate at all, but this restaurant still just has its, authentic, home feeling when you go in there. So that would be my recommendations. Mama D's.
I love it. Reservation at Mama D's. You better believe I'm
Yes.
trying that out next time.
Next time you're out here, that's where we're going.
That's great. So if anybody in the audience wants to follow you on social media, maybe they want to learn more about your talks on college campuses, where should they go?
So there are a couple routes. So obviously you can go to GreekUniversity.com and
.org.
on the web. .org. My fault. You're right. .org. You can go through, and all the different speakers have their own tab. So my tab is Zach. Obviously, you can go there. There's more background on me. There's a video of me speaking. I'm actually coming out with a new video as well, so there'll be some more highlights around that. And then my Instagram, which is Zach_Westerbeck, and Westerbeck is WESTERBECK. I know that sometimes that can be a mouthful. But yeah, you can follow me there. Please feel free to slide into the DMs. We can talk mental health all day, or anything that's top of mind for you. So I would say those are really the two areas where you can learn more about me or interact with me.
I love it. So I saw Zach recently speak at the University of Laverne, and I have to say, Zach absolutely rocked it on stage. High energy. It was a lot of fun. So I feel really fortunate to have you as part of the Greek University team. So I just wanted to let you know that, and I really appreciate what you've done here today. I think this is going to help a lot of people. So thank you very much, Zach. I really appreciate that. And thank you to the audience. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on an upcoming edition of Fraternity Foodie. Bye for now. Thanks, Zach.
Bye. Thanks, Mike.